Hello and welcome to our video around fundamentals of programming. Today we'll be talking about the various loops that we have, the basic ones in Java. So as you can see here, there are basically three different type of loops that are available within Java programming. The first one is a for loop. The second one is a while loop. The third one is a do while loop. So before going into too much details and providing explanation, I wanted to keep it more practical. So I will walk you through each of these loops with some of the examples in this course to make it more practical and then interactive for everyone. So let's jump into the Eclipse IDE that I have here, and I will show you how each of these loops work and will give you some examples. So as you can see here, I'm in Eclipse IDE. You can use any other environment, such as IntelliJ and others to build your Java application. So I just created a simple Java program, and here I am with a sample class, a sample hello package, and in the main function, where I will write some piece of code to talk about those loops. So before starting, let me just zoom it a bit so that it's easy to read for you as well. So the first loop that we'll talk about is the for loop. So for loop is a basic loop where you kind of keep your structures simple and easy, where you start with your initial conditions, you provide your testing conditions within the same statement, as well as you also have an incrementer decrementer condition. All of that is part of one single statement, and I will show you how that looks like. So the basic idea of this for loop is if you want to loop through and then print out some conditions or statements a finite number of times, like for example, printing your name 10 times, or doing something where you know how many times you need to execute, for loop is the best one or the preferred choice to use. So let's start with writing some simple examples. So let's say I want to go and then print a name 10 times. So in that case, what I will do is I will start with the initial condition. I will say, I take a variable integer, call it as I, and start with 1. Then the second part of this is the testing condition. I will say I will run this loop uh, up until 10 times. And then I will just say I will increment this variable every time when the loop executes. The next part here, as you can see on line number 9, this is basically a statement to print. So I'm just trying to print something like John Doe. I want to print the name multiple times. So one thing that you see here with print, it will not put a line or li line or a space after that statement is complete, and it will not put the next name in the next line. If you put a print ln, then after printing John Doe the first time, it will go and then print John Doe the next time in the next line. So this is just a basic example. Let's just run it and see how does it look like. So as you can see, I was able to write that those two simple commands, one for the loop and the second one for printing, and you can see the name got printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. The other thing that you can do with a for loop here is you can also have a curly bracket at the start and at the end. And what this will do is you can use this one to actually go and then do multiple things within that loop. So let's say if I want to go print out the name, as well as I want to print out the value for this variable I, all of this else also can be done. So instead of just doing one thing, if you have to do multiple things within the loop, you need to go and have a start and ending curly bracket, and that will help you in doing that. So let's run this again and see. So here, if you can see, it's printing the name every time, as well as it's printing the numerical value of I, because we are incrementing that by 1 every time. So it will do that here as well. The other thing that you can do, like people sometimes might get confused that you always will have to go start with the initialization of a lesser value, and then you have to have a testing condition and an incremental value. You can always go backwards to, like you can say, I want to start with 10 and I want to go and loop through up until my value is greater than or equal to 1, and I can do a decrement also. So this should also do the same thing and will print it 10 times. But starting from, instead of starting from 1 to 10, it will start from 10 all the way to 1. But it will do the same thing here as well. So I hope you are able to go and then understand how the for loop works. The next one that we will cover, let me just go and then erase it for time being. The second loop that we will cover is a while loop. So a while loop is kind of different than a for loop so in situations where you wanted to go and then execute some conditions at a finite number of times, you can use um, a for loop, whereas a while loop is used where you just need to have a testing condition, and you don't have to go and then want to deal with the starting variable or the incremental as part of the initial loop. So typically, while loop is used in those situations where you don't know at the start of your program how many times the loop needs to execute. Like for example, you might say, I want to go and then do this action up until somebody presses a specific key on the keyboard. That is one example where while loop might be useful, where you don't know the initial condition, but you can just say whenever there is a specific enter key or a space key being pressed, I want to get out the loop. But other than that, I want to just go and execute that loop. So that's a situation where while loop might be more beneficial compared to a for loop. So I will start with a basic example, again taking that sort of integer example into consideration. So let's say I start with integer 1 the same way, and I say uh, I start my while loop. I say I want to go and then have a testing condition. It will always evaluate whether true or false, and you can say if uh, my value for I is less than 10, then go and then execute whatever I was executing before. So I can just say again John Doe. So in this case, one key difference here would be you need to have that incrementer or decrementer, because if you don't do that part and if you are not incrementing your variable, which if you see in the for loop can be done directly as part of the initial statement, you will end up with infinite loop here. So what you can do here is you can say I want to print it, and then at the same time I want to go and then increment my value for I. So this is one way of incrementing using a ternary operator. The other one is you can just say I is equal to I plus 1, where you just increment the value. So both should work the same way. So it will increment and pretty much do the same thing like we saw last time. So if you just see uh, the results would be pretty much similar. So you will see the value being printed 10 times. So this is just one example. Uh, but other good example, like I just mentioned, would be if you want to rely on some input from a human on a keyboard, that condition can also be used. And that's the best case of using a while loop. Now let's go ahead and talk about the last one, which is a do while loop. So do while loop is very similar to a while loop. The only difference here is that you execute your statement. And by statement, I mean like the condition we have where we are printing the name like John Doe. So you execute your statement first in a do while loop, and then you test your condition afterwards. So uh, if so, ideally speaking, if you go and then follow the same conditions like we were following before, your do while loop will run one more time because the statement executes first and then the conditions are tested later on. And with that, I can just show you with one example. Like if you see the same example, we can just say integer I is equal to 1. Now what you do is you just say do, you write your statement, and then you later say while, and then you put a condition here. And then I can just go and then put the same condition that while I remain less than 10, I want to do something like printing out the name, which was John Doe. The other thing that you have to do is you have to go and then increment your counter. So I will just say I is equal to I plus 1. So what will happen here is it will print out this statement. It will go increment the number afterwards and then will test for the conditions. So here you can see it pretty much does the same thing. You have executed your statements. Statement first, you increment the value, and then later on it tests for the conditions. So if I start with, let's say, I equal to 11, this is one example where you can see a while loop might not run in this condition, but a do while loop will run because your initial value for I is 11, and we say only run the while loop when the value for I is less than or equal to 10. So it should not run it, but since the condition is being tested later, you will end up seeing John Doe being printed once because the condition was tested later. Now, if I take the same example and just quickly flip it to a while loop for you, and I just put while condition here and just remove these and the incremental part just like we had before. So you will see here in this example, if I just go delete it quickly. So what we are doing is we are just saying the value for I is 11. We are incrementing it by 1, and we are saying if the value for I as a variable is less than 10, only print. So in this case, you will see nothing will be printed because your initial condition had failed. So that's the basic difference between a while loop and a do while loop, where your conditions uh, in a while loop are tested first, whereas do while conditions are tested later. The other things to keep in mind while writing these loops are you might end up with some sort of infinite loops, and that's the thing that I have seen with some of the basic programmers. They don't do the implementation part properly, or they don't decrement those sort of conditions properly, and then you might end up having a while loop running infinitely. Like for example, if I just go and then write I equal to 1, and then I say I less than equal to 10, and then I just start to print it without incrementing. So since your value of I is not incrementing, it will always remain 1. You will end up having an infinite condition like this one where you see it just keeps on printing. So just something for the beginners to understand that they need to make sure that they have the proper testing condition and writing condition. So I will just stop it for now, but this is a situation where you can have this loop being running infinitely. So that's all we had for today. I hope you like this video. Feel free to provide your comments on how do you like it, and is there any specific topic around the fundamentals of programming that you want me to cover in the subsequent sessions. We'll see you again sometime soon. Take care.